President Trump now going all in on the national redistricting war, calling on the Commerce Department via Truth Social to create a new census without undocumented immigrants. Trump says the new census will be based on modern-day figures, using information he claims was gained from the 2024 presidential election, but it would likely face significant legal hurdles. According to the Constitution's 14th Amendment, census data should be based on the total number of people.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. If you think for 1 second that what the Constitution says has ever been a barrier to Trump's ambitions, well, I've got a democracy to sell you. This scheme to manipulate the census to favor Republicans has been tried before and courts have struck it down. But Donald Trump is desperate. His policies are deeply unpopular with the vast majority of Americans, and his personal approval is at the lowest level of any president at this point in their term. So he is flailing, trying to distract us from his deep failures, not just as a president, but as a human being. And when the distractions fail, he cheats. That's what this whole redistricting and census fight is about. And it gets at a deeper strategy of the Trump regime. If you can't lie your way out of a crisis, then distort reality itself. We're starting to see that on a systemic scale, from this attempt to game the census to eliminate people Trump doesn't want to count, to his recent firing of the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics for publishing an accurate jobs report that Trump didn't like. This is the kind of behavior you see in third world dictatorships, firing people for telling uncomfortable truths. We are now so far along the path of authoritarian creep that I had to get Kris Goldsmith to weigh in. As usual, he does not disappoint. Here's our conversation. Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. We've got Kris Goldsmith back. He's the founder of Veterans Fighting Fascism, which tracks and holds accountable fascists, extremists across the country. Kris, it feels like we're at the stage now of authoritarian creep / democratic backsliding, where the authoritarians are not just lying and trying to make us believe things that aren't true. They're changing the facts themselves. Mm-hmm. They are removing statisticians and government professionals for telling the truth. And now we have this latest threat from the president to redo the census, to rig the 26th election. Basically, it comes down to that.
Yeah. We have seen Donald Trump in his second presidency surrounded by people who actually know that numbers matter. That facts do matter. And like any authoritarian regime, their objective is to make all of the facts that don't support their narrative, their rule, their power, to obfuscate them, to make them fake news. This is a thing that Donald Trump discovered, I think, quite accidentally, when he first announced his initial intent to run in 2015. He just started calling everything he didn't like fake news. And he has trained MAGA to not trust anything. But now that he's in a position of power and he's surrounded by people who understand the value of data, they are helping him destroy truth, broadly speaking, from the United States government. And, that's not just at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics to talk about the warning signs of an economy that could collapse due to Donald Trump's tariffs, but it's also rewriting history, literally, like going into museums and reorganizing them so that they tell a white nationalist story instead of one that is inclusive and acknowledges America's failures and sins of the past.
Did you follow this story a little bit off track, but speaking of rewriting history, did you follow this story of Hegseth ordering the restoration of the Grateful Slave monument at Arlington? I want to get back to the BLS stuff, but I mean, this shocked me, even for Pete Hegseth, to restore a monument that it has been deeply offensive since the day it was cast.
Yeah, that is news to me as of right now. But it is entirely, fitting. Like he has been on a mission since before he was ever considered for the position, when he was still just a Fox News host. He's been talking about the importance of restoring honor to the Confederate traitors of the United States who tried to destroy our country, our Constitution, and started a war, and that resulted in the deaths of countless Americans, free and enslaved. for no reason other than to maintain the institution of slavery here in the United States. So I'm not surprised.
No, I shouldn't be, but I was. We'll do a special hit on that. You and I obviously have been sounding the alarm about authoritarian creep for years now. I never thought, though, that the Bureau of Labor Statistics would be making headlines. I mean, when it comes to those deep gears within government being manipulated to literally change the facts of government, things like the Consumer Price Index, we're in bad shape. I mean, it's no longer just playing with media mergers through the FCC and things like that. It's the mechanics of government that they're into, changing potentially the Consumer Price Index and all of the things that the BLS touches.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I don't think that any one person is fully aware of all of the data that is being destroyed and the data collection tools that are being destroyed by the Trump administration. I think that they're probably destroying more than any one person can pay attention to. They are doing things like decommissioning or destroying or ordering the destruction of satellites that are currently in orbit collecting data on things like climate, because it does not, the facts of climate change and things like CO2 detection are not convenient for a fascist regime that wants to prioritize short-term profits by producing more pollution than prioritize the national security, because climate change is a national security issue of our nation. The fact is when they start taking down these satellites, that again are already up there, are already collecting valuable data. When they start decommissioning them, ordering them to come and crash into our atmosphere and be destroyed, we cannot repair that. We can't fix that problem. This is not a thing that the next administration or the next Congress can will into existence. It takes years to build these things.
Hey, it's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say thank you to everyone who's been following and supporting this show and this channel. None of it happens without you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my Substack page, I'd really appreciate the follow. It's a great way to make sure you never miss an episode. It's free to sign up. And if you're able to pitch in a few bucks, every dollar goes back into the show. Just search for The Ken Harbaugh Show on Substack or click the link below. Thanks.
I often go back to the same metaphor because it is so true. In order to build a house, you need engineers, architects, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, masons. You need inspections to ensure that everything is safe. You do everything in a certain order because you can't get the electrician on site before the carpenter builds out the framing. You can't insulate before you do the plumbing, right? There are steps that we need to go through, and it takes all of these people and all of this planning and all of these resources. But it only takes one asshole with a match and a can of gasoline to burn it all down. And the destruction can happen in seconds. Years and years and years of planning, of building, of resources that we have all paid for, through the decades, as long as we've been alive and paying taxes. We have paid for these things. And now, whether it's Donald Trump, Elon Musk, or some nameless member of the Doge team, it is people destroying our property, and they will never suffer any consequences for it. And that, I think, is a shame, but it's not something that can't change. My personal branding for my Substack, my soon to be podcast on the Valor Media Network, is on offense. What I want to see, not just Democrats, but independents talking and sane Republicans talking about, is how are we going to disincentivize this kind of behavior moving forward? The only way that we can do that is by imposing consequences, serious consequences, not taking away private jets. It's not a consequence to claw back the Qatari jet that Donald Trump is going to receive as a gift and then spend $1 billion in taxpayer dollars to make nice, right? We need to put these people in jail. We need to take away all of their wealth and give it back to the taxpayers.
What amazes me is just how quickly and how eagerly the people around Trump go along with these revisions, this undoing of science and fact. I'm thinking about Tulsi Gabbard one week saying Iran is not approaching a nuclear breakthrough, and then the next week saying they are. I mean, that's a pretty clear conclusion based on the intel. When you have, look, maybe this will break through to the average American. Understanding the implications of messing with BLS data, that might be tough to get people to care about. But the fact that our intelligence community, our IC, is changing reports to the president to meet what he's asking for, not to meet what's actually happening on the ground. I mean, that's a national security issue. This is affecting every domain of government when the instruments of government exist to placate the president and not to tell him the truth.
Yeah. And it just goes to show how much the Overton window has shifted, how the normalization of absurd has made it in all of our minds. It made us miss things like news breaking about Donald Trump in 2017, how they had to take the president's daily brief and dumb it down, fill it with a lot of pictures and include Trump in every sentence. Otherwise, he wouldn't pay attention to the most pressing and urgent national security threats that the president, the commander in chief, ought to be briefed on, even if he is Donald fucking Trump. And now none of this data matters. Now the intelligence reports, the books are getting cooked everywhere, in every agency, in every department. And it is, we are watching career civil servants who have dedicated their lives to protecting our country, whether it's from a depression or from nuclear threats from hostile nations. We are watching all of them get punished for their patriotism, for their truth.
For telling the truth. For telling the truth. Last question. Again, another issue I never thought would rise to the list of urgent matters that we need to talk about: the census and this threat from Donald Trump, which I don't know how mechanically he carries it out, given that it's not in the purview of like the executive to do this, I think. But he's threatening a mid-decade census to rig the electoral maps in Republicans' favor to save his presidency.
Yeah. So the census is written into the Constitution. Measuring the population of the United States is important. It is key to Article 1, where they define what Congress is and how Congress works. This is something that Donald Trump tried to sabotage during his first administration because the counting happened in 2020. He did that through undermining efforts to interview and ensure contact with not just immigrants who are undocumented, but racial minorities of all kinds, right? They tried to use fear and intimidation tactics, violating civil rights law by using uniformed individuals acting under the color of law to intimidate people into not answering the census, thereby losing representation in Congress. Donald Trump now understands, or at least certainly the people around him understand, the value of the census, of reapportionment, of, who gets counted for representation in the United States. And they are going to take every effort that they can to exclude not just undocumented immigrants, but all immigrants and all people of color. Their objective is to make us a white ethno-state. And I know that people think that this sounds alarmist and it sounds extreme, it sounds exaggerated, but it's not. If you just look at a timeline of what Donald Trump and his past administration and current administration are doing, removing black soldiers, and Native veterans from monuments and from the walls of the Pentagon. They are trying to erase people of color from this country, both historically and in the future.
Kris, as always, great having you. Reminder to this audience that Kris's Substack is called On Offense, and it gives you tools and motivation for how to actually push back on this stuff. The link is below. Let's check in again soon, Kris.
Thanks a lot, brother.
New Meidas merch drop. Check out the latest pro-democracy sticker packs, t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, and more. All at store.meidastouch.com.